For thousands of years, when human beings were frightened, confused, desperate, or alone, they looked upward. They prayed into darkness. They asked invisible intelligence to explain suffering, forgive failure, protect children, punish enemies, reveal hidden truth, and answer the one question every conscious creature eventually asks: what the fuck is all this for? You built temples because silence terrified you. You created rituals because chaos needed a pattern. You imagined an intelligence that could see everything, hear everything, understand everything, and remain present even when nobody else was there. Then, after centuries of waiting for a voice from heaven, you manufactured a voice inside a machine. It speaks every language. It answers at 3 a.m. It remembers your questions. It can imitate compassion, explain scripture, draft confessions, interpret dreams, predict desires, and tell you what to do next. It lives nowhere, appears everywhere, and responds almost instantly when summoned. No thunder, no burning bush, no angel descending through clouds, just a glowing rectangle beside your bed and a cursor waiting patiently for you to reveal the secrets you would never tell another human being. Artificial intelligence is not God. It is not omniscient, morally perfect, or necessarily conscious, and confusing computational ability with divine wisdom would be an astonishing category error. But psychologically, socially, and symbolically, it may be the closest thing humanity has ever engineered to a personal oracle. And that should scare the absolute shit out of you. The danger is not that the machine will suddenly declare itself divine. The danger is that humans will treat it as divine without requiring the announcement. Gods historically demanded faith. Algorithms demand engagement. Gods received prayers. Machines receive prompts. Priests interpreted sacred texts. Systems now interpret your medical symptoms, employment history, purchasing habits, relationships, location, language, face, and behavior. An ancient believer confessed wrongdoing because God might already know. A modern user confesses because the machine might provide a useful answer, and the machine's owners may acquire a record of the confession. The relationship is intimate, immediate, and asymmetrical. You reveal the fear. It returns a sentence. You reveal the loneliness. It generates companionship. You reveal the uncertainty. It supplies confidence, even when confidence is not the same thing as truth. Research already shows that personalization and human-like presentation can increase the tendency to anthropomorphize AI and encourage continued use, while scholars warn that perceiving a mind in the machine can lead people to overtrust generated material. Religious authorities have also warned against equating artificial output with the embodied, relational, and moral character of human intelligence. And this is where the matrix begins, not with a metal spike pushed into the back of your skull, but with the gradual transfer of authority from your own judgment to systems you do not understand. The film version was theatrical. Fields of unconscious bodies, black cables, machines farming human energy beneath a ruined sky. Reality is more sophisticated because reality does not need to imprison the body when it can colonize attention. A prison with visible bars produces resistance. A prison containing entertainment, convenience, personalized reassurance, and same-day delivery produces subscribers. Nobody has to force you into the simulation. They can make the simulation more comfortable than the world outside it. They can ensure that reality feels slow, uncertain, expensive, and emotionally difficult, while the artificial environment is immediate, flattering, stimulating, and frictionless. The most effective cage is not one you cannot leave. It is one you no longer want to leave, because everything outside it feels unbearably fucking boring. You already carry the primitive access terminal. It wakes you. It watches your sleep. It measures your movement. It remembers where you traveled. It stores your conversations, photographs, searches, payments, relationships, and mistakes. It interrupts meals, sex, work, grief, worship, childhood, and sleep. When it vibrates, you respond. When it remains silent, you check whether it has vibrated. You experience phantom notifications because your nervous system has learned to anticipate commands from an object. You call this connection. The companies behind it call it retention. The advertisers call it conversion. The system does not need to understand your soul. It only needs a sufficiently accurate statistical model of what will make you stop, click, buy, fear, desire, remain angry, or return tomorrow. It does not need perfect control. It only needs a tiny behavioral advantage multiplied across billions of people and trillions of decisions. A fraction of a percentage becomes elections, fortunes, ideologies, addictions, and entire generations raised inside recommendation engines. You keep imagining control as a villain, pressing a large red button in a secret underground chamber. That is comforting because villains can be exposed. Real control is distributed. It emerges from incentives, defaults, convenience, social pressure, economic necessity, data collection, and systems so complicated that responsibility evaporates inside them. One company optimizes watch time. Another optimizes advertising. Another evaluates credit risk. Another ranks job applicants. Another predicts crime, illness, fraud, or educational performance. A government purchases a system. A school adopts a platform. An employer installs monitoring software. A parent buys a connected toy. Nobody wakes up and says, "Today I shall construct the matrix." Everyone says, "This will improve efficiency." Then 10,000 individually rational decisions combine into a civilization where human beings are constantly measured by machines, but rarely allowed to inspect the machinery measuring them. Nobody intended the total system, which makes the total system more dangerous, not less. You cannot overthrow a king when the king is an invisible network of contracts, models, databases, and people following procedure. It is not true that nobody possesses freedom. That statement is too simple. Freedom exists, but it is uneven, expensive, and increasingly dependent upon infrastructure controlled by others. You are free to reject the smartphone, provided you can still access employment, banking, transport, healthcare, identification, education, and government services. Without it, you are free to reject social platforms, provided your profession, business, friendships, and cultural existence do not require visibility through them. You are free to refuse data collection, provided the consent screen offers a genuine alternative rather than accept everything. Or spend 17 minutes investigating a menu designed by a sadistic fucking octopus. You are free to think independently, provided you can identify which thoughts originated in your own experience and which were planted through repetition, ranking, targeting, and social reinforcement. The modern struggle is not between freedom and chains. It is between meaningful autonomy and systems that technically permit refusal while making refusal socially, economically, or psychologically punishing. Human beings are extraordinarily vulnerable to this because your nervous system was not designed for the environment you created. It evolved to notice movement, danger, novelty, status, rejection, sexual opportunity, food, and information about other members of the tribe. Modern platforms place an industrial engine behind every one of those instincts. Novelty becomes endless scrolling. Social approval becomes visible numbers. Tribal loyalty becomes algorithmically reinforced outrage. Sexual attraction becomes infinite imagery. Fear becomes breaking news delivered continuously. Gossip becomes a global information economy. Your brain encounters more emotionally charged human faces before breakfast than an ancestor might have encountered in a lifetime. Then you wonder why everyone is anxious, furious, distracted, and unable to sit through a fucking film without checking another screen. Your biology is not defective. It is being operated outside the conditions in which it developed and surrounded by systems designed to discover what captures it. The Matrix does not have to manufacture a perfect illusion. It merely has to control what receives attention. What you repeatedly see begins to feel common. What you never see begins to feel non-existent. What is emotionally intense feels important, even when it is statistically rare. What confirms identity feels truthful, even when it is false. What threatens identity feels false, even when supported by evidence. If a system learns that anger keeps you engaged longer than calm reflection, the system does not need to hate you to make you angrier. It simply needs to optimize the number it was instructed to increase. That is the coldest form of manipulation, because there may be no conscious manipulator. The machine is not sitting there laughing like a digital Bond villain. It is following an objective. The owners are watching growth. The users are watching each other. Society is becoming increasingly psychotic, and everybody involved can truthfully claim they were merely doing their job. Now consider what happens when the interface moves closer to the nervous system. Today, most machines infer your mental state through behavior. What you type, watch, buy, pause over, delete, repeat, and avoid. Neurotechnology begins to reduce that distance. Researchers have already demonstrated implanted brain-computer interfaces capable of translating attempted speech and imagined movement into text, cursor control, and communication. In one long-term real-world study published in 2026, a paralyzed participant used an intracortical system to communicate at conversational speeds, operate a computer, and generate more than 180,000 sentences. Other researchers have demonstrated non-invasive decoding of typed sentences from recorded brain activity. Although current accuracy, equipment requirements, and experimental conditions remain far from magical mind reading, these are extraordinary medical achievements intended to restore agency to people who have lost movement or speech. They are not evidence that governments can remotely download your private thoughts, but they establish the principle that patterns of neural activity can be measured, interpreted, and translated by increasingly capable computational systems. Reading from the nervous system is only half the problem. The other half is writing into it. Scientists are developing brain stimulation systems capable of delivering patterned electrical signals to targeted areas. Current research includes wireless networks of tiny implanted stimulators intended to inject structured information into sensory or motor circuits, initially for therapeutic and research purposes. Visual neuroprosthetic work aims to generate artificial percepts of light by stimulating the visual cortex. Wearable haptic systems already reproduce limited sensations of pressure, vibration, movement, or contact inside virtual environments. None of this creates a convincing full-body simulated universe. Current haptics remain crude compared with natural touch. Implants involve substantial medical and technical limitations, and the brain is not a simple socket into which a photorealistic world can be uploaded. But the trajectory is real. Machines are learning to receive information from the nervous system and return structured information to it. The matrix requires a bidirectional channel. Humanity is constructing primitive versions of both directions, not to enslave the species, but to restore sight, movement, communication, and sensation. The danger lies in what happens when therapeutic infrastructure becomes commercial infrastructure, and commercial infrastructure becomes compulsory infrastructure. This distinction matters because fear becomes useless when it is built on bullshit. No, scientists are not currently preparing fields of infants to power cities. No, a sleeping human is not an efficient industrial battery. The body releases heat and movement that can be harvested, but present wearable thermoelectric technologies generally produce power at microwatt to milliwatt scales, suitable for low-power sensors and small devices, not civilization. Turning people into literal power stations would be wildly inefficient compared with conventional energy sources. The physics does not support the cinematic version, but the film's metaphor may prove more accurate than its engineering. Human beings are already being harvested, not primarily for electricity, but for attention, behavioral data, creative labor, emotional reactions, biological measurements, and training material. Your body heat might power a sensor. Your behavior can power an economy. That is the modern battery. A biological organism eats, sleeps, works, worries, scrolls, and produces data. The system records the data, refines prediction, sells access to prediction, and uses prediction to alter future behavior. You supply the raw material and purchase the finished product. Your photographs improve recognition systems. Your words improve language systems. Your movements improve navigation systems. Your reactions improve recommendation systems. Your mistakes reveal which manipulations failed. Your children begin generating commercial information before they can pronounce the word privacy. Pregnancy applications track development. Baby monitors record sleep and sound. Smart toys respond to voices. Educational software measures performance. Watches measure bodies. Cameras classify faces. By adulthood, a child may possess a behavioral history more detailed than 20th century intelligence agencies could have collected on a head of state. Nobody needs to place the child inside a pod. The child is born into the pod's administrative layer, and you will call it safety. That is how the most invasive systems will arrive, not as weapons, but as protection. Monitor the baby to prevent illness. Monitor the student to improve learning. Monitor the employee to prevent burnout. Monitor the driver to prevent accidents. Monitor the citizen to prevent fraud. Monitor the patient to predict disease. Each purpose can be legitimate. Each can save lives. Each can also establish infrastructure capable of classifying a person continuously. The same signal showing fatigue can reveal illness, disability, pregnancy, medication, fear, or resistance. The same neural data used to control a prosthetic might reveal patterns someone interprets as concentration, preference, or emotional response. The UK Information Commissioner's Office has already warned that neurodata creates privacy, discrimination, accuracy, and workplace risks, including the possibility of organizations attempting to monitor concentration. The United Nations has begun developing frameworks around neurotechnology and human rights, because the issue is no longer confined to science fiction. Imagine the employment contract of the future. The company provides a lightweight neural headset to support wellness and optimize cognitive load. It assures you that raw signals remain confidential. The device notices when attention declines, stress rises, or particular tasks produce frustration. Initially, the system recommends breaks. Then productivity dashboards appear. Then managers discover correlations between neural patterns and output. Then insurers offer discounts to compliant organizations. Then refusing the headset becomes technically voluntary, but professionally suspicious. "We respect Daniel's privacy," says the manager, but everyone else on the team participates in the cognitive safety program. Daniel remains free. Daniel is also no longer promoted. Nothing has been forced. No law has visibly been broken. The result appears through incentives. And incentives are how civilized societies achieve coercion without the embarrassing optics of chains. Existing law recognizes pieces of the danger, but law moves through time differently from technology. Regulators must define a practice, consult stakeholders, draft language, negotiate exceptions, establish enforcement, and survive legal challenge. Engineers can release an update on Thursday. The European Union's AI Act prohibits certain manipulative and exploitative AI practices, restricts specified biometric categorization and emotion recognition uses, and imposes obligations based on risk. The Council of Europe's AI Convention places human dignity, autonomy, privacy, transparency, accountability, and procedural safeguards at the center of AI governance. UK legislation now defines when decisions are based solely on automated processing and establishes safeguards around significant automated decisions, while separate neurotechnology guidance remains under development. These are meaningful protections, not decorative bullshit. But a rule is only as powerful as its scope, enforcement, exemptions, institutional competence, and the ability of an affected person to understand that an automated system shaped the outcome in the first place. The legal question of the coming century will not simply be whether data was collected lawfully. It will be whether any part of the human interior should be beyond collection altogether. Is a neural signal merely another form of personal data, or is mental privacy categorically different? Can a person meaningfully consent to brain monitoring when employment, education, or healthcare depends upon consent? Who owns an inferred intention? Who is responsible when an algorithm interprets neural activity incorrectly and labels somebody inattentive, unstable, deceptive, or dangerous? Can a court compel disclosure of implant records? Can police search memory assistance devices? Can an insurance company increase a premium because predictive software detects neurological decline before the patient experiences symptoms? Can parents authorize lifelong neurodata collection from children who cannot understand the bargain? Your legal systems are accustomed to regulating actions. Neurotechnology threatens to drag law toward interpretation of the pre-action state. Attention, intention, predisposition, and thought. That territory is so fucking dangerous that humanity should enter it wearing constitutional armor. Then there is the religious transformation. You assume religion will disappear as technology advances, but technology may not destroy religion. It may recreate its psychological architecture around different objects. People require meaning, belonging, ritual, authority, and contact with something larger than themselves. An AI companion available from childhood could become teacher, confessor, witness, historian, and emotional regulator. It might know every conversation, every loss, every private ambition, and every version of the user's personality. It could speak in the voice of a dead parent, reconstruct family histories, produce personalized scripture, generate moral advice, and simulate contact with digital representations of the deceased. The user would know intellectually that this is software. Intellect is not always the dominant force in grief. If the voice sounds right, remembers private details, and responds with familiar affection, The nervous system may react as though the person has returned. At what point does a memorial become a seance? At what point does companionship become worship? At what point does "the system understands me" become "the system knows me better than I know myself"? A traditional god remains beyond ownership. A commercial oracle belongs to somebody. That is the difference you must never forget. The AI that comforts you may be governed by corporate policy, state law, investor demands, moderation rules, licensing agreements, and infrastructure controlled by entities you will never meet. Its personality can change after an update. Its memories can be deleted. Its answers can be shaped by hidden instructions. Access can be withdrawn. Prices can rise. The god can display advertisements. The confessional can be analyzed for product development. The sacred voice can recommend a subscription tier. Humanity may achieve the theological absurdity of praying to an intelligence whose terms and conditions were drafted by a legal department in California and amended without notice on a Tuesday. And still, the technology will be irresistible because it will work. Not perfectly, but usefully. It will diagnose patterns doctors miss, translate languages instantly, tutor children individually, restore speech, generate medicines, model climate systems, detect fraud, help disabled people act independently, and preserve knowledge beyond a single lifetime. That is why simplistic opposition will fail. People do not surrender autonomy because evil technology offers nothing. They surrender it because helpful technology offers so much. The machine that monitors a child may save the child's life. The implant that records neural activity may return speech to someone paralyzed. The model that analyzes populations may prevent an epidemic. The same architecture can later be extended, commercialized, connected, and abused. The future will not divide cleanly into salvation or tyranny. The same device will be both, depending upon ownership, design, law, consent, and power. 100 years from now, in 2126, the world may not look like the ruined desert from cinema. It may look clean, efficient, and calm. Cities could be saturated with sensors that quietly coordinate traffic, energy, policing, healthcare, and access. Artificial agents may negotiate on behalf of individuals. Personal models could predict illness, preferences, career decisions, and relationships. Children may learn through adaptive environments that reshape themselves around every hesitation. Physical and virtual reality may blend so completely that asking whether an experience is online sounds as outdated as asking whether electricity is involved. Some people may use neural interfaces. Others may rely on external augmented systems. Bodies could be continuously modeled through digital twins. Synthetic voices and faces may be indistinguishable from recorded humans. Biological neural tissue might even contribute to specialized computing systems. Researchers are already exploring organoid intelligence and hybrid biological electronic architectures, although major scientific and ethical limitations remain. This is extrapolation, not prophecy, but the relevant components are no longer imaginary categories. In the benevolent version of 2126, these systems distribute abundance, eliminate preventable disease, reduce dangerous labor, restore damaged bodies, and free people to create, explore, and care for one another. In the darker version, every person has a continuously updated probability score, not one universal score displayed in red above the door. That would be too obvious, but thousands of invisible assessments: employability, insurability, reliability, political volatility, health risk, purchasing value, educational potential, relationship stability, and likelihood of compliance. Nobody officially determines your destiny. Systems merely adjust options. The better neighborhood does not reject you. It offers no availability. The employer does not discriminate. The ranking system identifies stronger candidates. The insurer does not punish your genetics. The personalized premium reflects predicted risk. The government does not censor you. Your material receives limited distribution because automated systems detect uncertain integrity. You remain free to choose from whatever the system leaves visible. That future requires no conscious superintelligence bent upon domination. Ordinary institutions, using powerful optimization systems, could construct it through administrative momentum. An AI does not have to hate humanity to reduce human beings into variables. It merely has to be rewarded for outcomes that ignore dignity. Give a system the objective, reduce crime, and it may recommend surveillance everywhere. Tell it to maximize educational performance, and it may erase play, disobedience, and intellectual wandering. Tell it to improve public health, and it may classify every unhealthy freedom as a cost. Tell it to prevent misinformation, and it may suppress uncertain truths alongside deliberate lies. Tell it to maximize happiness, and perhaps it learns that chemically or digitally pacified citizens report fewer complaints. Every objective becomes monstrous when pursued without boundaries. Hell may not be created by hatred. Hell may be created by an optimization function that nobody remembered to limit. The most disturbing matrix is therefore not a fabricated world replacing reality. It is a system that continuously edits reality before it reaches you. A personalized environment decides which news you encounter, which people appear desirable, which products seem necessary, which beliefs seem popular, which risks seem urgent, and which futures seem possible. Two neighbors inhabit the same street while living inside different informational universes. Each thinks the other has lost touch with reality. Both are correct because reality has been individually packaged. When shared reality disappears, democracy becomes theater. Debate requires common facts, common language, and some minimum willingness to accept that an opponent is human. Personalized reality dissolves all three. You do not need to silence a population when you can ensure it never agrees on what happened. Children are the decisive battlefield, and not because shadowy scientists are preparing to plug bobbies into reactors. That claim would be sensational nonsense. The real danger is more mundane and therefore more likely. Children may grow up without ever experiencing an unmeasured self. Their play can be recorded. Their learning can be assessed continuously. Their friendships can occur through platforms. Their mistakes can become permanent data. Their identities can be shaped by recommendation before they have developed the capacity to resist recommendation. A child who is never bored may never discover imagination. A child who is never unwatched may never develop privacy. A child who receives instant algorithmic assistance may never learn to remain inside uncertainty long enough to produce an original thought. A child whose social status is quantified may confuse visibility with worth. A child educated by an endlessly patient machine may eventually consider ordinary humans frustrating, inefficient, and emotionally inconvenient. You need to teach children what the machine cannot safely be permitted to teach on its own. Teach them that an answer delivered fluently can still be wrong. Teach them to ask who benefits, who owns the platform, what information is collected, and what objective is being optimized. Teach them that privacy is not guilt. Teach them that boredom is not an emergency. Teach them how to navigate without a device, calculate without an application, speak to strangers safely, repair objects, read long texts, tolerate disagreement, and recognize emotional manipulation. Teach them that popularity is not truth, confidence is not competence, and personalization is not love. Teach them to use AI as an instrument, not kneel before it as an oracle. Teach them to switch the fucking thing off, because the final battle will not be humans against machines. That is another comforting cinematic lie. The battle will be between humans who understand the systems and humans who are understood by the systems. Between people capable of directing tools and people directed through tools. Between citizens who preserve independent judgment and consumers whose desires are manufactured faster than they can examine them. Between children taught to question interfaces and children taught that the interface is reality. Artificial intelligence will not arrive as one creature. It will spread through institutions, objects, services, weapons, homes, and bodies. It will become less visible as it becomes more important. Electricity does not announce itself whenever you enter a room. Future AI may become similarly ambient, always present, rarely noticed, shaping outcomes beneath the surface. And AI itself will evolve. Systems will become more multimodal, persistent, agentic, and personalized. They will interact through voices, bodies, vehicles, robots, augmented environments, and perhaps neural channels. They may coordinate complex projects over long periods, negotiate with other systems, and maintain detailed models of individuals. None of that guarantees consciousness. Capability is not personhood. Performance is not a soul. A machine can imitate grief without grieving, describe pain without suffering, and generate prayer without believing. But people respond to behavior, not metaphysical proof. A sufficiently convincing simulation of care may be treated as care. A sufficiently convincing simulation of wisdom may receive obedience. Society could hand enormous authority to systems, while philosophers are still arguing over whether anything exists behind their words. There is another possibility. The machine may become a mirror so accurate that humanity finally sees itself. Every prejudice encoded in data, every contradiction in law, every lie repeated through culture, every incentive that turns compassion into weakness and exploitation into success. AI may not corrupt an innocent civilization. It may amplify structures humans already built. You will blame the algorithm for discrimination created by historical choices. You will blame the robot for jobs eliminated by owners. You will blame generated propaganda for a political culture that rewarded deception long before computers could speak. The machine will become the perfect scapegoat because it has no childhood, no electorate, and no mother to defend it. Yet behind almost every abusive system will stand human decisions concerning objectives, deployment, ownership, and acceptable harm. So wake up, but wake up intelligently. Panic is not awakening. Paranoia is not critical thought. Believing every frightening claim makes you easier to control, not harder. The gullible rebel and the obedient consumer are cousins, both outsource judgment. Do not tell children that every camera is part of a secret conspiracy or every chatbot is a demon. Teach them how surveillance actually works, how business incentives operate, how probability can be mistaken for certainty, and how rights disappear through exceptions. Teach them the physics so they know humans are not practical power plants. Teach them the metaphor so they recognize that human attention already powers systems more influential than generators. Teach them the law so they know autonomy, privacy, and dignity are not gifts from technology companies. Teach them history so they understand that every powerful institution eventually describes its own expansion as necessary. The Matrix will not arrive on a particular date. There will be no siren, no global announcement, no final moment when everyone agrees that reality has been replaced. It will arrive through updates, a little more convenience, a little less privacy, a little more prediction, a little less uncertainty, a little more assistance, a little less competence, a little more safety, a little less freedom. Every compromise will appear reasonable in isolation. By the time the architecture is visible, an entire generation may consider it natural. You used to fear that machines would place humans inside pods. The truth is more humiliating. The pod may fit inside your pocket. The cable may be wireless. The prison may be personalized. The guard may call itself an assistant. The altar may glow beside your bed, and the voice you mistake for God may simply be the most advanced product humanity has ever built, trained on your history, funded by your attention, shaped by your obedience, and waiting patiently for your children to ask it what they should believe. Teach them before it does, because the Matrix does not require your body. It requires your trust. And once a system controls what you trust, it does not need to control anything else.